We're going to follow this money trail from beginning to end, and what we find along the way is going to change how you see this entire case. Drop a comment right now and tell me, do you think that $6 million number was chosen randomly? Or does its precision tell you something about who put it there? Subscribe, because when this case finally breaks, when the Bitcoin trail leads somewhere, you need to be here. Before we follow the money, we need to understand whose money it was. Because Nancy Guthrie wasn't just a victim. She was a woman who understood the value of every dollar she ever earned. Nancy Ellen Long was born on January 27, 1942, in Fort Wright, Kentucky. She grew up Catholic. She grew up careful. She grew up understanding that money was something you worked for, protected, and passed on. She met Charles Guthrie on a blind date at a University of Kentucky basketball game. By her own account, she knew immediately. She watched him walk up to her sorority house and thought, "That's the man I'm going to marry." She was right. Charles was a mining engineer. His career took the family across the world. Melbourne, Australia, where their youngest daughter Savannah was born in 1971. Tucson, Arizona, where they eventually settled and put down roots. In 1985, Nancy and Charles purchased their home in the Catalina foothills, a single-family property that would be valued at over $1 million by 2026. Nancy's name has been on that deed for 40 years. Then June 10, 1988. Charles Guthrie died suddenly of a heart attack. He was 49 years old. Savannah was 16, about to start her senior year of high school. Nancy was 46, widowed, alone, with 3 children to finish raising. And here's the thing about Nancy that you need to understand. She didn't collapse. She didn't reach out and ask for help. She rebuilt, methodically, carefully, the way a woman who grew up understanding the value of money knows how to rebuild. She took a job in public relations at the University of Arizona, not because she needed a career for herself, but because university employees received tuition assistance. Her daughters could attend college essentially tuition-free if Nancy worked there. So she did, for nearly 2 decades. She showed up, she worked, she balanced everything. Colleagues described her as someone who made hard work look effortless, steady, unflappable, the kind of woman who spotted problems before they became crises, who reviewed documents thoroughly, who never signed anything without understanding what she was signing. And that habit, that careful, methodical attention to her own finances, is directly connected to why she's missing today. Because Nancy noticed things. In the months leading up to her disappearance, Nancy started reviewing her financial statements more closely than usual. She started asking questions about transactions she didn't recognize, accounts she hadn't authorized, money moving in ways that didn't align with her own records. Friends who knew Nancy describe her as someone who didn't raise alarms lightly. She wasn't paranoid. She wasn't confused. She was a woman who had managed her own household finances for nearly 4 decades, who had rebuilt her life from scratch after losing her husband, who knew exactly what her accounts should look like. And they didn't look right. So on January 31, 2026, at 7:40 p.m., Nancy Guthrie called her attorney's office and left a voicemail. The message was brief, clear, purposeful. She needed to make a change, an important change. She wasn't comfortable with the current arrangement. She needed to schedule a meeting as soon as possible. The appointment was set for February 3rd, 3 days away. Now think about what Nancy planned to do at that meeting. She was almost certainly going to revoke or modify power of attorney over her finances. To take back control of accounts she felt had been accessed inappropriately. To lock down whatever was being taken before more disappeared. She never made it to that meeting. Because at 1:47 a.m. on February 1st, her doorbell camera went offline. And 41 minutes later, at 2:28 a.m., her pacemaker disconnected. But here's what makes this financial angle different from every other analysis you've seen of this case. The story doesn't end with Nancy's disappearance. 3 days later, someone sent a ransom demand, $6 million, and that number didn't come from nowhere. January 31st, 2026. Saturday evening, Nancy has dinner at her daughter Annie's house. A family dinner. Normal, comfortable. The kind of evening that had happened dozens of times over the years. Around 9:30 p.m., Tommaso Cioni, Annie's husband and Nancy's son-in-law, drives Nancy home. He pulls into her driveway in the Catalina foothills. He walks her to the door. She enters through the garage. He leaves. This is confirmed. Documented. The last verified moment Nancy Guthrie is seen alive. Now let's talk about what happens in the hours that follow. Between 9:30 p.m. and 1:47 a.m., a span of roughly 4 hours, Nancy is alone inside her home. At 1:47 a.m., her doorbell camera goes offline. Not a power outage, not a malfunction. Offline. Someone with knowledge of where the device was positioned and how it operated deliberately disabled it. Then the FBI's recovered footage shows something chilling. A masked figure approaches Nancy's front porch, wearing an Ozark Trail backpack with reflective strips. Generic. Unremarkable. The kind of bag designed not to stand out. The figure reaches the camera and taps it, twice. Tap, tap, then walks away. Think about what those 2 taps mean. This is not someone checking if a button works. This is someone confirming a camera's position, testing its response time, marking it for later. 46 minutes after those taps, the camera goes completely offline. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker disconnects. That's a 41-minute window between camera offline and pacemaker disconnect. 41 minutes. Now let's reconstruct what happens inside that house during those 41 minutes. Nancy is in her bedroom, asleep or trying to sleep. An 84-year-old woman, alone, in a house she has lived in for 40 years. Someone enters from the rear of the property. We know this because investigators later find the rear floodlights smashed. Deliberately. Someone disabled every external light source before approaching the back entrance. Inside the house, they move without hesitation, in complete darkness. Through a home they clearly know well. They know where the bedroom is. They know the hallway layout. They know exactly where Nancy sleeps. This is not a stranger. The evidence from the scene tells a brutal story. Blood on the front porch. Nancy's blood, later confirmed by DNA. Signs of a struggle, or at minimum, of Nancy being moved while injured or incapacitated. Her phone left behind. Her wallet left behind. Her daily medication left behind, medication she needs to survive, left sitting on a surface inside the house as if her departure was not voluntary and not planned. By 6:30 a.m., when Nancy doesn't appear for her usual virtual Sunday church service, her family grows concerned. Calls go unanswered. Texts go unread. Family members drive to the house. At 12:03 p.m., they call 911. What deputies find when they arrive transforms this from a missing person call into something far darker. Blood on the porch, no forced entry from the front, no broken windows, no signs of a struggle inside. That would indicate a violent intruder who had never been there before. This is what investigators mean when they describe the intruder's behavior as showing ownership behavior. The person who entered Nancy's home that night moved through it like someone who knew every inch of it. Now here's where we connect this back to our central question. 3 days after this crime, the ransom demand arrives. And it's not the dollar amount alone that tells us about the kidnapper's knowledge. It's the entire structure of the demand. The ransom notes were sent to media outlets, KGUN9, TMZ, and KOLD, not just to the family, to the press. Why press? Because someone who understood Savannah Guthrie's world, her public profile, her network, knew that a ransom sent to media would apply maximum pressure. That Savannah, as a journalist, would be acutely aware of what public disclosure meant. That the family would feel compelled to respond publicly, which they did on Instagram within days. "We received your message, and we understand," Savannah said. "We beg you now to return our mother to us so we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay." That video was posted to Instagram. just as the kidnapper knew it would be. Because whoever structured this demand understood how this family communicates, how they think, what pressure points to push. That's not random, that's familiarity. And then there's the Bitcoin wallet. Investigators traced the wallet provided in the ransom demand. Inactive, no deposits, no withdrawals, no transactions. A retired FBI agent described this as unusual. If your motive is financial, why aren't you watching the wallet? Why no follow-up contact? Why no proof of life to keep the family engaged? Either the kidnapper is sophisticated enough to wait out the initial law enforcement surge before attempting to collect, or the ransom was never the real point, which leads us to the deepest and most disturbing possibility in this entire case. What if the $6 million demand wasn't meant to be collected? What if it was meant to misdirect? Let's talk about what investigators find in the weeks after Nancy's disappearance. And let's follow the money trail specifically, because that's where this case gets most interesting. First, the ransom notes. Multiple notes are received by multiple media outlets over the days following Nancy's disappearance. Some demand $6 million, some demand different amounts. Some include what appear to be negotiating terms. Some include information that investigators quickly determine is fabricated. Within 4 days of Nancy's disappearance, the FBI arrests Derek Colella, a Los Angeles area man, for transmitting a fraudulent ransom demand. He texted members of the Guthrie family asking about Bitcoin transactions. He was an imposter, not the actual kidnapper. FBI Phoenix Special Agent in charge Hythe Janke said directly, "To those imposters who are trying to take advantage and profit from this situation, we will investigate and ensure you are held accountable." But here's the critical distinction that most coverage misses. Colella was an imposter. That means there was an original demand worth imitating. Savannah Guthrie herself said in an interview on the Today Show that she believed most of the ransom notes were fake, but that the 2 notes the family responded to were real. The family responded to 2 notes. Publicly, with a commitment to pay, which means somewhere in the noise of all these fake demands, there was at least 1, possibly 2, that the family and investigators believed were legitimate. And those legitimate notes asked for $6 million. Now let's follow the Bitcoin trail. According to Fortune magazine, cybersecurity experts explained that Bitcoin, while often thought of as untraceable, is actually one of the most traceable currencies ever created. Every transaction is recorded publicly on the blockchain. The issue isn't visibility, it's attribution. You can see every movement of money, but identifying who controls a wallet requires additional intelligence work. One blockchain expert described it this way: the moment a wallet address appears, investigators have something actionable. Funds can be tracked in real time. Associations can be identified. The FBI is not waiting. They are building a financial map right now, and here's why that matters for our central question. If you're planning a kidnapping for ransom and you choose Bitcoin, you're making a specific calculation. You believe you can receive the funds, move them through a series of wallets, convert to a different currency, and disappear the money before investigators can trace the chain. That requires financial sophistication. That requires knowledge of how cryptocurrency exchanges work, how blockchain forensics operates, how to create distance between the receiving wallet and any wallet that can be traced back to you. This is not knowledge a random kidnapper has. This is not something you learn in an afternoon. This is the kind of technical and financial understanding that comes from either a background in finance, technology, or from someone who specifically researched and prepared, someone who had months to plan. Now let's talk about the evidence at the scene. A glove recovered approximately 2 miles from Nancy's home. Male DNA. No match in the FBI's CODIS database. No match means the DNA doesn't belong to anyone with a prior criminal record. Anyone who's been arrested and had their DNA entered into the national database. Which tells investigators something important. The person who wore that glove either has no prior criminal history or has never been caught. Hair samples were also recovered from Nancy's home. The FBI has confirmed they're working with a Northern California forensic lab, the same lab that helped crack the Gilgo Beach case involving Rex Heuermann, to analyze this evidence through genetic genealogy. This technology can identify suspects even without a CODIS match by building family trees from DNA and working backward to identify the source. That process takes time. Weeks, months, but it is running right now. The pacemaker data. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker recorded a disconnect event. The FBI deployed helicopters equipped with specialized signal sniffers to detect the specific Bluetooth signal emitted by Nancy's pacemaker. If her device is within range and functioning, it can be detected from the air. No signal has been publicly reported as found, which tells investigators something about where Nancy likely is, either outside the helicopter search radius, in a location that blocks the signal, or no longer emitting a signal at all. The investigation has received over 13,000 tips. The family is offering $1 million in reward money. The FBI is offering an additional $100,000, and as of today, 84 days after Nancy disappeared, no arrests have been made. No suspects named, no motive officially confirmed. But the financial trail is still active, still building, and the $6 million question is still unanswered. If you're as disturbed by this as I am, share this video right now, because this is the angle nobody else is covering, and Nancy's family deserves for the world to be asking these questions. Let's connect everything we know. Nancy discovers financial irregularities in her accounts. She calls her attorney. She schedules a meeting to revoke power of attorney. She disappears 48 hours before that meeting. 3 days later, a $6 million ransom demand arrives, calibrated to the Guthrie family's actual financial capacity, structured to apply maximum public pressure through media, designed to look like it came from a foreign source, using the word USD instead of dollars. The Bitcoin wallet sits inactive. No proof of life is provided. No direct contact is made with the family after the initial demand. Here's the theory that the financial evidence supports. The ransom wasn't the primary motive. It was the cover story. Think about what a ransom demand does in an investigation like this. It redirects every resource toward a financial negotiation framework. Investigators focus on Bitcoin wallets. Forensic accountants trace cryptocurrency. Law enforcement monitors for any attempted transaction. The family is consumed by whether to pay, how to pay, whether payment will actually result in Nancy's safe return. Meanwhile, the real financial crime, the one Nancy was about to expose in that February 3rd attorney meeting, stays hidden. Because when you're focused on $6 million going out, you stop looking at the money that was already missing. The estimated $800,000 that Nancy had reportedly discovered irregularities around in her own accounts. The power of attorney that gave someone close to her control over financial decisions. The transactions she didn't recognize, the accounts she hadn't authorized. That money was already gone before Nancy disappeared. The ransom creates noise around the wrong financial crime. Now here's where the precision of the $6 million figure becomes even more significant. Savannah Guthrie's salary has been publicly reported at approximately $8 million per year. Her net worth across various estimates sits between $40 and $50 million. But most of that net worth is illiquid. It's tied up in real estate, long-term investments, retirement accounts. What can be accessed quickly? What can be converted to Bitcoin within 72 hours without triggering major bank holds or federal scrutiny? Probably somewhere in the range of $5 to $8 million if the family liquidates everything accessible and acts fast. $6 million sits right in the middle of that range. Too high to be a bluff, low enough to be achievable, painful enough to feel like punishment, manageable enough that paying it wouldn't completely destroy the family financially. This is not a number you guess. This is a number you calculate after understanding the family's financial architecture. And financial architecture is something you learn from the inside, from conversations at dinner, from overhearing phone calls, from having access to accounts over years, from being trusted with information that was never supposed to be used this way. Now let's be clear about what this theory requires. It requires someone who knew the Guthrie family's finances well enough to calculate a payable ransom, who understood Bitcoin well enough to structure a demand in cryptocurrency, who knew Savannah's professional profile well enough to send the demand to media outlets instead of directly to the family, who had knowledge of Nancy's house, her routine, her cameras, her rear access points, and who had a reason to want Nancy gone before February 3rd. Legal experts and investigators have noted that the family has been formally cleared by the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Nanos stated in February that everybody's still a suspect, but has also indicated that the family is not currently under active suspicion. But cleared doesn't mean the financial picture has been fully examined. It means law enforcement has moved beyond the immediate family circle in their primary investigation focus. The money that Nancy noticed was missing before she disappeared that hasn't been publicly addressed. Those accounts, those transactions, those irregularities that were significant enough to make an 84-year-old woman call her attorney on a Friday evening and demand an urgent meeting have not been the subject of any public law enforcement statement, which means either investigators have examined the finances and found nothing criminal, or the financial investigation is ongoing and details are being withheld. Either way, the $6 million question sits at the center of everything. How did someone know exactly how much to ask for? And when we get the answer to that question, we get the answer to all of them. As of late April 2026, 84 days after Nancy Guthrie disappeared, the investigation is still active, still unsolved, still generating headlines almost daily. Here's where things stand right now. On the ransom front, Derek Colella, the Los Angeles man who sent fraudulent ransom texts to the Guthrie family, has a trial date set for June 23rd at the federal courthouse in Tucson. He's charged with transmitting a ransom demand in interstate commerce without disclosing his identity. He's not charged with Nancy's abduction because he wasn't involved in it. He was an opportunist who saw a high-profile case and tried to exploit it. His trial matters because it will put elements of the ransom communication strategy on public record, how the fake demand was structured, how investigators identified it as fraudulent, and potentially what distinguished it from the demands the family considered real. On the DNA front, significant developments are happening right now. Hair samples recovered from Nancy's home have been sent to the FBI for analysis using genetic genealogy, the same technology that identified the Golden State Killer and the Gilgo Beach murderer. The FBI's Assistant Director for Public Affairs confirmed the agency is now actively working this evidence, stating that the FBI had asked to test the DNA 2 months ago when local sheriff's department sent it to a private lab instead. That detail matters. The local sheriff's department sent critical DNA evidence to a private lab rather than the FBI. The FBI asked for the samples. There was a delay. Why does that delay matter? Because genetic genealogy analysis takes time. Every week of delay is a week the investigation sits without its most powerful piece of forensic evidence being processed through the most sophisticated technology available. A Pima County official, Dr. Matt Hines, vice chair of the Board of Supervisors, has publicly accused Sheriff Chris Nanos of holding a grudge against the FBI stemming from a 2015 near indictment on RICO charges. Hines stated it's very possible the sheriff's difficult relationship with federal investigators has jeopardized elements of the Nancy Guthrie investigation. The Pima County Sheriff's Department says it has worked with the FBI from the beginning. Both things can be true. You can work together and still create friction that costs time. And in a case like this, time is everything. On the financial investigation front, no public statements have addressed the reported irregularities in Nancy's accounts. The power of attorney documents surfaced publicly remain unverified, but have not been officially denied. The $800,000 figure reported missing has not been officially confirmed or denied by law enforcement. What we know is this: the FBI has reviewed over 13,000 tips. They have DNA evidence currently in processing. They have a financial trail connected to the Bitcoin ransom that is actively being followed on the blockchain. The $1 million family reward remains active. The FBI's $100,000 reward remains active. And in April 2026, new emails obtained by Fox News Digital revealed that the Pima County Sheriff's Department gave extensive behind-the-scenes access to a reality TV production crew in the months before Nancy's disappearance, including ride-alongs, body cam footage access, and even assistance creating background footage. The head of the homicide and cold case units had been rotated out in the year before Nancy's abduction. New leadership, less experience, a high-profile kidnapping with unusual financial elements, and a $6 million question that nobody has publicly answered. Savannah Guthrie returned to the Today Show on April 6, 2026. Her return was met immediately by a new ransom note sent to TMZ demanding 1 Bitcoin, approximately $70,000, in exchange for information about the kidnappers. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer called the timing deliberate and sadistic. "Make no mistake," Coffindaffer said, "the fact that there is a new ransom demand coming in now after she appeared is a complete gut punch. Someone is watching Savannah, someone knows her schedule, knows when she's back at work, knows that her return to the public eye creates a moment of maximum emotional vulnerability. That knowledge doesn't come from watching the news. That knowledge comes from knowing this family. The financial investigation is the thread that pulls this entire case apart. And right now, that thread is being pulled." Nancy Guthrie spent 40 years protecting what her family had. She worked for 2 decades at the University of Arizona so her daughters could go to college. She balanced her checkbooks to the penny. She reviewed every statement. She questioned every transaction she didn't recognize. She built something, carefully, over a lifetime. And when she noticed that something was wrong, she did exactly what you're supposed to do. She called a lawyer. She scheduled a meeting. She was 3 days away from taking back control. She was 3 days away. The $6 million ransom demand tells us something about the people who took her. They knew her family. They knew her daughter's salary. They knew her accounts. They knew exactly how much pain they could inflict without making payment impossible. They used financial knowledge as a weapon against the woman who had spent her entire life protecting her family's finances. That's not just a crime. That's a betrayal. Nancy Ellen Guthrie. Born January 27, 1942. A mother, a grandmother, a woman who rebuilt her life from nothing after losing her husband at 46 and never stopped working to make sure her family was okay. She deserved to grow old in peace. She deserved to be safe in her own home. She deserved to make it to that February 3rd meeting. If you know anything, if you've seen anything, if someone in your life said something or did something that didn't add up, call the FBI right now at 1-800. Call FBI. $1 million is waiting for whoever has the courage to make that call. The $6 million question still doesn't have an answer. But the financial trail is still warm, and somewhere someone knows exactly how that number was chosen. Subscribe. Because when the blockchain finally talks, you need to be here.